Thank you all for being here today. I know how valuable your time is, and I'm extremely grateful that you are spending some time with us today. I hope to present some information that will help your business run more smoothly, and I want to thank Ivy for the opportunity to share all of this with you today. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm the person who's telling you what a designer workroom relationship should be. I have been introduced myself properly. I'm Ceil DiGuglielmo. I am the owner of So Much More Custom Sewing for the Home. I have been in business since 2005. I run a single person workroom from my home. I have almost 800 square feet that is dedicated solely to my business. I am the immediate past president of the Pennsylvania chapter of the Window Coverings Association of America, and I am currently serving as secretary on the national board of the WCAA. I have been a member of IFDA, and I am an Evernote certified consultant. Because I'm so passionate about education, I also started a podcast. I interview people in the industry. There's a focus on workrooms, but I have not solely interviewed workrooms. I've interviewed people outside of the industry just because I found them fascinating. It's given me insight into how we run our businesses and how things progress for us, and it's been a fascinating journey. I have had some wonderful, profitable relationships with designers. I have formed friendships with some of them, and I have found great ways to work with them. I have also had some circumstances that have been not so wonderful. So what I'm hoping to share with you today is the opportunity to cut through the not so wonderful and get directly to the profitable part of it. I would like to see you succeed in your business, and when you have a partnership with a great workroom, you both succeed. So I'm going to share my screen now and start the presentation, the slideshow presentation. And again, type in any questions as you start, as they come up in your mind, and I'll answer them at the end. Just give me 1 second. So the communication and collaboration that you have with the workroom that you choose means increased profits for both you and your workroom. And that's why I talk about it being a partnership. Reducing errors by having a good relationship with your workroom means that they will know you and they will know your needs. Products will be produced as quickly as possible with very few errors. And when you've worked with a workroom and know the quality of their work, as well as how well they address problems, installation day becomes a great day, not one that keeps you awake the night before. First, what do you need? You can't start a collaboration or determine what kind of workroom you need until you've established what you need. Are you a seasoned designer who knows how to write out work orders and calculate yardage? Are you new in the business and need someone who will be patient with you and explain things like ring drop, projection, inside bracket versus outside bracket? A large commercial workroom such as Horizons or Carroll Fabrics may work well for the designer who has a high volume, needs a fast turnover, and has a fairly simple design aesthetic. A smaller, local to you commercial workroom is more flexible and can produce more than a single person workroom. Both types of commercial workrooms may not be as flexible about custom couture work. They're also going to expect you to fill out all forms very precisely and hold you accountable for every piece of information. Do you need a partner? Are you a single person workroom, single person firm looking to collaborate with someone? A single person or smaller custom workroom would really be a great fit for you. Many of these smaller workrooms are willing to work with you to go on measures, to collaborate on design, as well as fabric selection. They will know you and your standards. So if, for instance, you request a white lining on a product and you have normally requested pale ivory, they're going to call and confirm. If you use a larger workroom, if it says white lining, that's what you're getting, whether you meant it or not. If your pillow quote request is for a 16 by 16 pillow and the fabric repeat is 20 inches, if you have a smaller workroom, they're going to call you and ask if you're okay with part of the design missing, or do you want a larger pillow? They won't assume. They won't assume in either direction. They won't assume that they know best, that because the repeat is 20 by 20 to make it 20 inches, maybe it doesn't fit into the space that you're designing for. But without communication and collaboration, that won't happen. Your workroom is a valuable resource. They know what fabrics will work for which projects. That beautiful poly fabric that's exactly the right color, it's probably going to flare unless it has cotton lining and inner lining. And even still, it might need a memory stitch to keep it under control. A well-educated workroom is going to know this. That beautiful linen, yes, it will shrink and grow. Ask your workroom for suggestions and they are happy to collaborate with you. Do you want banding but not know where it should be on the project? Your workroom will work with you. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today are pertain more to a smaller workroom like myself. Don't ever assume that a small workroom can't produce large projects or large volume. Depending on who they collaborate with and what you need from them, they're just as capable of large projects as the larger commercial workrooms. Your workroom can be your partner, depends on how you treat them. They're a valuable resource, as I've said, and collaborating with you on a project means your workroom is as invested as you are in the outcome. When you have employees working in a very large commercial workroom, they never get to meet the client. If you're working with a smaller workroom, chances are you're bringing them to a measure, they're bringing to the install. They are as invested in the client's happiness as you are. Ask your workroom and they will have ideas and suggestions. The trim that you requested for the Roman shade, let's say you asked for it to be inset 2 inches. But as your workroom begins the process, they might see that by setting it at 1 inch, it means that the miter will be absolutely perfect. But it depends on the width and where it gets set in. They can send you a couple of pictures to show you what it will look like and allow you to decide. So now you know what you're looking for. How do you find it? How do you find a great workroom? Ask. Ask your colleagues in the Ivy community. Go to the Window Covering Association of America website, and right there in the center is the Find a Professional link. Click on that and you can check by name or by location to find people who are professionals. Get referrals from IFDA and ASID members, check LinkedIn, check Facebook groups. I highly recommend you ask your local fabric reps. I've just spoken with 2 of my fellow workroom colleagues who have been given recommendations. Recommendations were given to their newest designers by the fabric reps. Fabric reps know the quality of the work that's coming out of the workrooms, and they're happy to recommend you as a designer to the workrooms. Find out as much as you can about the workroom beforehand. You need to do your homework. There are not a lot of certification programs anymore, but Vision offers the Window Fashion Certified Professional course. You must pay to take it. You have tests and standards to know. Does your workroom educate themselves? Are they a member of the Window Covering Association? Do they go to the International Window Covering Expo? Do they go to the Custom Workroom Conference? Go to their website, look at their Facebook, look at their Instagram. Are they professional looking? What do their photos look like? On Facebook, are they complaining about someone that they just worked with? Are they being unkind about someone? Or are they posting about what they've completed or what educational event they have just recently attended? This gives you a little bit of a flavor about who they are before you contact them. Now that you're ready to talk to them, you need to have a list of things that you want to know from your potential workroom. You're creating a partnership, but unless you know who's responsible for what and you don't ask ahead of time, you could be blindsided. A retail workroom that works with designers must be careful to be ethical and not work around a designer. Is the workroom that you're looking at retail, to the trade, or both? You need to know how they handle direct requests from the client. If a client reaches out to a retail workroom once they have worked through a designer, in my opinion, it's unethical for that workroom to work directly with the client without checking with the designer. That having been said, I've been given the blessing from a few designers to go ahead because the job was too small. It was 1 or 2 pillows. It was a small valance in a bathroom, not a whole room that they were working on. But I never did that without checking with the designer. When they do this, you need to know how the workroom handles the fees. Do they charge a design fee? Do they mark up their own work? If they don't, then their prices are lower than yours, and the client is going to go around you to get to the retail workroom. So this is why a lot of us choose just to be to the trade. I don't want to have that ethical problem going on. And quite frankly, I'm not an interior designer, and I want to leave that to all of you who are so good at it. At this point in my career, the client does not have access to me without the designer. I don't give them my business card. If they find me online and they contact me, I refer them directly back to the designer. If I have someone that reaches out to me, I have several designers that I can refer them to, but I don't want to be doing that retail work. On the few occasions where I do charge the consultation fee and I do mark up my own work. The design process is separate from fabrication, and they both have value and they both come at a cost. I've mentioned the words wholesale and to the trade and retail, and I want to just clarify that a little bit further. I tend to think of wholesale as the large workrooms, like Horizons, like Carol Fabrics. Not everyone uses those words. That's what I think of when I think of a commercial workroom as wholesale. I refer to myself as to the trade because I only work for interior designers, but I work with them. And I know there are a lot of workrooms who never leave the workroom. They get the work orders, everything comes to them from the designer. I go out and measure with the designer. I collaborate with them in whatever way they need me to, and I'm much more involved than just faxing or email me a work order. And that's all the interaction you need from me. So that's really just how I determine them. But as we talk about communication later on, if your workroom calls themselves to the trade, you might want to ask them what defines to the trade for them. Do you get a written price list from your workroom? And if they do, is it item specific or general guidelines? I'm going to tell you that price lists are a very tricky subject. A lot of smaller workrooms are not willing to publish a price list because they don't want other workrooms in their area to know what they're charging. They know that each job is so custom that they don't want you basing the price on a list until they know all of the requirements of the job. It also allows smaller workrooms to react when products like foam and lining and inner lining go up, because we need to be able to adjust our pricing for that. That having been said, if you're trying to close a sale, do you have a ballpark idea of how much a pair of 1.5 lined and inner lined panels with a leading edge flat trim is going to cost? Or do you have to wait for a quote? And how long does your workroom take to get back to you with a quote? That's a question you should be asking when you talk with them. Does your workroom offer turnkey services? Will they handle everything from start to finish? Can you hand over the entire window treatment project to them? Hard treatments, soft treatments, hardware installation, and they'll take care of it for you? The services that they provide is really the key to keeping the process moving smoothly. If your firm needs to be focused on other parts of it, then you're looking for a workroom that will take care of all of it for you. If you are a small firm and you are working directly with a client and you have your hands in everything, then maybe you don't need someone who will order fabric for you or hardware. Can you order fabric and hardware from your workroom? Do they have accounts with more places than you do? If so, that's an asset. If you can direct ship to them, are they going to check everything in? No one wants to find out on installation day that the rings didn't make it or that the medallions don't all match. If the workroom is receiving your products, did they get a complete list and a photo of everything from you? This is one of the places where technology is handy. I use Evernote to keep client information in, and a designer can make a change in his or her copy of the notebook, and mine is automatically updated. So if there's a change in the finish of hardware, I will know what to expect when it comes in. If your workroom is receiving fabric and hardware or hard treatments for you, there is a cost for that. So if you are ordering the hardware and you're making the markup on it, but you're having it shipped to them and expecting them to check it in, they are not going to have the same prices as the $20 a width workroom somewhere else. So you need to be aware of the fact that these services drive the prices of your workroom. Will your workroom check in the fabric, and when? I know that this works differently for different workrooms. I just had a conversation recently with someone who does not check in the fabric until they are ready to fabricate the project. I hear those words and I get chills up and down my spine. My policy in my workroom is within 3 days of receiving the fabric, I have rolled it out, checked it for yardage, and checked it for flaws. The reason that I do that is because how the workflow goes in my workroom. Once the fabric is on the table to be fabricated, if I have a problem, I don't want to go back. I want to keep the process moving. So I check in fabric ahead of time. I know of workrooms who have not done this, and out of the years that they've been in business, they've had maybe 1 or 2 problems. Again, ask the question and know. If you're comfortable with that, great. I personally am not, but that's okay too. How are your products packaged? Is everything packaged separately, or if you have 3 Roman shades, are they all in one package? Is everything covered in plastic? Do they hang their panels, or do they lay them flat? Do they fan fold them? If there are remakes that need to be made, what do they charge for it, and who's responsible for it? Also, when I say remakes, it could be that you have a client that you worked with a few years ago and they want to make a change to some window treatments that they already have. Some workrooms will not take things and remake them. Some will. It's a question you should ask. Does your workroom have a written policies and procedures document? Here's another question. Do you? Establishing how you and your workroom operate is important to know before the relationship begins. You really can't cover every situation, but a written document will help you get an idea about what the workroom is willing to do. And I'll tell you, if there's a long list of things they don't do, they may be a very niche-oriented workroom, and they may not be the right workroom for you. But again, you won't know until you've asked the questions ahead of time. Does your workroom have insurance? Okay, so I did not have insurance for a very long time. I didn't see why I needed it. I had an umbrella policy on my homeowner's insurance that covered if there was damage to anything in my workroom. I thought that was just fine. Until one day I was out measuring in a client's home, and it was a very wide window, and you know how sometimes your metal measuring tapes will bend. It knocked over a small, one-of-a-kind Peruvian sculptures. It was a tiny little thing. It did not break, I am happy to tell you, and I did not have to replace it. But in those few seconds before I could look carefully at it and make sure it was okay, I envisioned having to sell my house to replace it. Since that time, I have gone from being a sole proprietor to an LLC, and I have insurance separate from the rider on my homeowner's insurance. Your workroom should have insurance, and so should you. Your workroom should be able to give you a 1099. If they are not reporting their taxes accurately, then they are not a legitimate business. What's the turnaround time? This is a question that should be asked for regular and holiday time. You also want to know what their policy is about when your work goes into the pipeline. In my workroom, once every single thing has been received, as well as the deposit check, that's when their work goes in to be the next job. If they are sending me hardware, I don't put the job in until the hardware is in my workroom. If the hardware is going directly to the designer, then I don't need to wait for it. But again, without knowing what their workflow is, you need to ask. How is your workroom paid? Do you pay them or the client? If you're marking up the workroom quote, then you should be the one paying the workroom. And if you don't want your clients to have access to your workroom, you should be paying the client. And if your client is paying the workroom, why? How are you making money? Workrooms should be more than happy to take you on a tour. Will they allow you to do that? A small one-person or mid-sized local workroom should be happy to give you a scheduled tour. As long as you make arrangements with them, they should be very happy to see you. When you're there, what do you need to be looking for? Is it neat and orderly, or is there stuff all over the place? If they knew you were coming, they should have at least cleaned the workroom. I know I do. What kind of machines do they have? Do they have a commercial blind hem machine like the one that's shown in the front of this picture? Or are they using a home machine? Or are they sewing their hems by hand? Those are all questions you need to ask. There's nothing wrong with not having a blind hemmer and sewing hems by hand. Some of the finest workrooms do it that way. If they are using a home machine for side hems, that's something you might want to question. In the WCAA standards, that is not acceptable. Why should they sew them by hand? I will tell you that on a lot of fabrics, the blind hemmer does a take-up on long panels. I do the bottom hem of my panels with the blind hemmer, and a lot of my side hems I do by hand because it shortens the tension of the thread, shortens the side hems, and you get the smile where your panels are shorter at the hems than they are in the center. I've gotten fast enough that I can do it as well. All right, I can't do it as quickly as my blind hemmer, but I do it fast. And that assures me that my panels are even all the way around. Is everything neatly stored, or is it an accident waiting to happen? Do they have samples of their work that you can look at? If they do, what's the quality of that work? Are the side hems turned doubled? Are the bottom hems 4 inches deep, and are they turned double? Are they using inner lining? Do they offer it? Not only is it important to notice how things are stored for neatness, but it's also for the workflow. If a workroom has all of their lining stored under a table, each time they need lining, they have to get it out. If they have it on some kind of a rack where it's easy access, it cuts down on the amount of time that it takes them to produce your product. Do they have multiple types of lining available to you? Is there a sense of efficiency in the workroom? Can you see what the workflow is? I've taken a workroom efficiency course, and even after having been in business the number of years that I was in, I took it with several other workrooms, some of whom were in business for 4 years, one of whom had been in business for 30 years. I assure you that there are always things for us to learn how to do, and a good workroom will keep themselves educated. But what I loved seeing on the faces around me was how everyone reacted to the specifics of keeping the workflow consistent. Because when you do things the same way repeatedly, there are fewer mistakes and the workflow flows through the workroom better. You should be able to see that. Are they cutting lining and throwing it over something? Is there stuff stacked in places that looks like it should be in process? Those are things, if they're not cleaning it up for you to see it for a tour, then you know it's going to be worse when you're not there. So those are things that you should be looking for. Can they show you some previous projects? Do they have any work in progress? Do they have photos of their finished work? Does your workroom guarantee their work? If there's an issue, how quickly will they fix it? And who's responsible for any error? Can you check the paperwork to see where the communication failed? Do you have any paperwork? This made me laugh. Texting is a brilliant way to miscommunicate how you feel and misinterpret what other people mean. Everything should be documented, and texting is not the way to do that. You don't change the finished length of a 4-width pair of traversing panels and expect everything to go smoothly on installation day. Texting is fine for basic information. What time is our appointment? What's the customer's address? But here's the thing. It's not really the best way to keep track of things long term, and it really isn't much harder to send an email. Again, I work with a few of my designers through Evernote, and we can easily keep track of everything as well as any changes that are made. For those designers that I work with that don't use Evernote, when they email me, I forward all the emails directly to Evernote, so I'm constantly updated to changes. Your workroom should be capable of keeping up with any changes. This is a changing industry. We need to be able to react to a client's needs, react to a back-ordered fabric, react to a change in the finish of the hardware, and make sure that we have the right product on installation day. Without communication, that is not going to be possible. We've all seen the meme or the drawing of the tree, what the designer designed, what the fabricator made, what the installer did, and what the client actually wanted. But I thought this was interesting because they both see exactly what they see, and their perspective is different. So the words we use, as well as how we are looking at something, is extremely important. Are you providing a detailed drawing to your workroom? Or are you giving them samples of the fabric? If they're receiving it directly, you need to order them a cutting for approval, give them a swatch, or trim or scan a photo of it to them. You know, I could really spend almost the whole hour talking about choosing appropriate fabric. And you might ask, why are we talking about fabric specifically in this webinar as opposed to a Design 101 webinar? But here's the thing. The wrong fabric for the finished product is a huge cause of problems in expected outcome. And so then that becomes one of the biggest problems between the workroom and the designer. Fabrics have changed dramatically because of technology over the last couple of years. And there are Sunbrella fabrics that can be used indoors that never could have been used the way they are today. I attended a TBO workshop with my local WCAA chapter recently, and if I had not held some of the fabrics in my hand, I would never have believed how soft some of the new Sunbrella fabrics are. They actually, in their catalog, in the TBO website, they have an entire bedroom that is done with the most magnificent Sunbrella fabrics I've ever felt. They were soft and drapable and gorgeous. But if you don't talk with your workroom about what's appropriate for a project, that's where the problems really are going to be. While you are the final word on the design, your workroom should really be the final word on whether or not a fabric is appropriate for your project. If you haven't actually fabricated or can't make valid suggestions, please, please, please trust your workroom to know when something is a good choice for a design or style. That having been said, I have several designers who have barely picked up a needle and thread to sew on buttons. But if they have suggestions for me, I am willing to listen. Sometimes not knowing how to fabricate means that they are not held back by preconceived notions. So I have had designers make suggestions to me that have worked. So the inference is not that designers are not choosing an incorrect fabric. It's the samples that we get to choose from are so small that understanding how they're going to behave is really sometimes impossible to know. If it's a really large project, you really might want to consider ordering a yard or so for the workroom to see if it will drape the way you want it to, if that's a consideration. Or know if it's going to flare when you're doing 2-story drapes that are 4 widths wide. If you're working with a workroom that you trust, they might already have experience with the fabric that you've chosen, and then they can give you suggestions on it. So this is going to be my glam or don't. I will tell you, I have seen some things on Facebook, and this is, I made a reference to checking Facebook when you're looking at a workroom. I belong to several Facebook groups, and when I see someone post something where they're making fun of how something looks, I always cringe just a little bit, because we've all been in situations where we're unhappy with how something turned out, and we really don't need the judgment of others. I want to tell you about this project. The designer wanted that beautiful tape along the bottom of the swag and along a curved jabot. That tape was a crewel embroidered and hand beaded trim. It was exquisite. It was also very stiff. So when she gave me a piece of it, I told her that it would not work on the drape, drape of the swag, because that's cut on the bias and this tape would not curve properly. And she had a very curved jabot. So my recommendation was that we make the lines a little bit sharper, make the angle along here a little bit less severe, and that tape would work. That was what worked well in this project. What did not work well was that this fabric was so incredibly stiff that neither one of us could have anticipated it from the 2-inch by 2-inch piece of a sample that she had. The color was absolutely perfect for this Williamsburg style dining room, but the fabric was really stiff and neither one of us could have known. So the minute I received the fabric and started to unroll it, I realized we were going to have a problem. And I called her and I expressed my concerns. We cut down on the width of the jabot. This is actually smaller than she initially requested. And I steamed the daylights out of those pleats, and then I used my tack gun to control it. This is a picture of before, and I think I hated this fabric so much I never even took an after picture of it to show you how it turned out better. But neither one of us could have anticipated how this particular fabric would flare. And so I made the choice as a workroom to go ahead with it. So the outcome was my responsibility. Had we had a larger piece of the sample, we could have seen the difference in how it draped, and we might have made a different decision. So if you're doing a large project and you're not sure, it will more than pay for itself to order a yard of the fabric and send it to your workroom and have them approve it for the project before you get started. So what happens when the job goes right? How do you communicate to your workroom that you're happy with the work? I will tell you that when I don't go to an installation, and I always know where they are, when they are, I watch the clock. And my designers are wonderful, and they will text me, customer thrilled, so am I. Or small problem, can I call you? Nothing makes my heart beat faster than seeing my designer's name come up on my phone while a job is being installed. And they know that, and they quickly will say to me, everything's great, so that they know I can stop having a pounding heart. Do you call them and thank them? Do you let them know when things went right? And do you let them know how much you appreciate their input and suggestions? This is a relationship. Do you do that with your kids and your spouse and your family members? You should be doing it with your workroom too. When you look at the finished job and the panels are exactly the right length and the banding is exactly where you wanted it to be, and the trim on the pillow turned out absolutely perfectly, and that valance that your workroom sent you 4 pictures of fabric placement so that it would look perfect, all they want to know is that you're happy with it, and so is the client. And all that takes is a text, often with a photograph. Quite a few of my workroom colleagues do not go to the installs, so their babies leave their workroom and they never see them again. Sending your workroom a photograph from your phone is really all some of us are looking for. I did attend a workshop a few years ago where they recommended that the person, the designers, send pizza or candy or flowers to their workroom. I'm actually really easily satisfied. I just want to know that the job went well and that the client is happy. But I need to hear that from my designers. In finding a great workroom, is that something that you're going to do? Does your workroom need to hear that? That's me personally. I know of other workrooms, once the work leaves their room, they don't think about it again. They're on to the next job. Me, I want to know where my babies ended up and if everybody's happy with the work. So again, what's important to you as a designer, and does that fit in with the workroom that you're interviewing? So I'm going to take questions in a couple minutes, but I wanted to give you contact information for myself. You can email me if you have any questions at ceilwdi@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, which is ceildi.com. And I really want to say thank you to Ivy for letting me have this opportunity today to talk with the designers and share some of my experiences as a workroom, and to let you know what I value in a great designer relationship, and know that when I provide quality, well-made products for you, we both profit from that. And in the end, it matters that we all love what we do, but we also need to be making money from it. And if the process goes smoothly with few problems, then everybody's happy and everybody makes more money. I had a conversation recently with a designer who had been working with a commercial workroom. She had given them almost $100,000 worth of orders for the year and had a 42% remake. 42% of the treatments she sent to them had to be remade because there were errors. And I will tell you that that took my breath away, because that is a vicious waste of everyone's time. I recently had to go with a designer to a client's house because there was a problem with a London shade. We'd installed 2 London shades in the same room, and they didn't quite look right. So as we were standing waiting for the client to open the door, my designer looked at me and she said, "When was the last time we had to do this?" And neither one of us could remember. I think it's been well over a year. That's because we communicate with each other. And if there is a problem, we take care of it quickly. The problem with these Roman shades were that the weight bar was in the wrong place. I quickly replaced it. Both of the London shades matched, and the client was thrilled. So the communication really cuts. So one remake in over a year, as opposed to a much higher percentage, means it's a waste of everyone's time and money. So I hope that some of this information will help you to reduce the number of errors and to help you find a great workroom. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I can start answering some questions. Okay, I'm going to go down here and pull them up. Okay, it looks like I don't want to mispronounce your name. Itohn, Ellis. I'm sorry. With a last name like DiGuglielmo, I'm really particular about saying people's names properly, but thank you. I love the sound of your workflow, business model, involvement, and ethic. Do you know of any workrooms in any other states that you know share your ethic and that you would recommend? I will tell you that as a national member of the WCAA board and as someone who interviews people, I am getting to know a lot of workrooms. I highly recommend you visit the WCAA website and look for professionals. We have standards within the WCAA, and it is really one of the most ethical group of people I've ever had the opportunity to work with. We also share a great deal. We have, in our local Pennsylvania chapter, we have designers as well as workrooms. And some of the designers have said how much more the workrooms are willing to share. I have local colleagues within 5 miles of me who do exactly what I do, who work out of their homes or have small retail space or commercial spaces. And I can call them and ask them for advice. I can call and ask them for 3 yards of buckram until my order comes in, and we help each other out and we share methods with each other. And so that way, the standards are extremely important to us, and we stay on track with what we're doing. I'm not sure what state you're in, but I would absolutely recommend that you go to the WCA website or the other groups that you're involved with and asking who people are liking working with. Laura, Laura Motley Design, your name shows up, but I don't actually see a question. Oh, I see you were checking in from Santa Barbara, California. Thanks for that, Laura. And then Eileen wants to know, what is your opinion on working with high-end retailers for window treatments? Eileen, I assume you're going to mean like Ethan Allen or Calico Corners, because places like Pottery Barn and Restoration Hardware are all pre-made. So I will give you my opinion on both. I have been asked to hem and join panels from both Pottery Barn and Restoration Hardware. My experience with them has been that nothing is consistent. And a 96-inch panel, if you buy 4 of them, one of them might be 96 inches. The other 3 will be different lengths and widths. It's just not a consistent, it's not a consistent product. They're also packaged and folded. And if they are silk or linen, those folds will never come out of it. As far as places like Ethan Allen or Calico Corners, a lot of my colleagues actually do produce work for them. I think that you have to know what your budget is. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. My prices are higher than the commercial workrooms around me. I provide services that they do not. I did have a client come to me, a potential designer, who came to me to tell me that she loved this local workroom nearby, and she told me his price per panel. And I'm going to make up numbers because I don't want any of you to be comparing prices within that are common within my area as opposed to your area. But let's say she came to me and said his price per width was $50 per width. And let's say mine was $75. I decided to do an apples to apples comparison. When you look at his advertised price of $50, it did not include the cost of the lining. It was a lined panel for $50. His lining, he was charging $15 a yard. I charge a different price, but my starting fee is higher. He does not deliver. The designer has to go to his workroom all the time to pick up, and she has to send the fabric either directly to him or she had to drive it to him. There had been several times when she had fabric sent directly to him that it was not the right fabric, and that wasn't caught because I work more closely with my designers. I know what fabric I'm expecting. So I think that you can get quality work from the high-end retailers, but it is not going to be the same hand-holding, and it's not going to be the same quality of work. But if that's what your client's budget allows for, then I think they're a perfectly acceptable way to get custom window treatments for your clients. And I hope that answered your question, Eileen. Freya says, is there any reading materials you would recommend for a designer in order to have better communication with the workroom? I am not aware of anything like that, Freya. I think that if you're in an area where there are IFDA chapters, WCAA chapters, I think that working with, networking with other groups, other people, would help you to know what else you want to know about your workroom. Ellie, I think I could put together the list of questions and give it to you separately if that's okay. I'd be more than happy to do that. And just so that you can have a printed list. And again, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Freya. Okay, Ellie said yes, and we can send it through. I do see some comments. Kane, I think that's how you pronounce it. Thank you, Ceil. Great presentation. Your favorite takeaway is order a yard of fabric before project begins. Yeah, the sample is not always the same. Also, if you do a CFA, a cutting for approval, you'll also be checking the color more closely. If it's a different dye lot, and it really matters how closely the fabric color matches the rest of what's going on in your project, then a CFA is really a great thing to do. A yard of fabric can always be used for something else. And I think that's one of the questions that I asked, that I mentioned. What does your workroom do with the leftovers? And how much is left over? If they are overquoting all of the time, then that's another issue. I generally have very little fabric left over. I'm careful. Having said that, I do have fabric left over. I learned very early in my career that trying to save the client's money by ordering as little fabric as possible for the job only cost me stress and aggravation. I order carefully. I never have any intention of wasting anyone's money, but if there's a pattern repeat and I have not carefully ordered the right amount of fabric, I might have to order another, if it's for a panel, I might have to order another 3 whole yards because I underestimated. And I can't afford to stay in business if I make that mistake over and over again. So I frequently have at least a yard left over of fabric. Sometimes there is a minor flaw in the fabric, and just by bumping up one pattern repeat, I can get past it without a problem. If I don't order enough fabric, then the entire order has to be redone. So those are things that I've learned over time, sometimes at an expense to myself. And as I said, a little bit of leftover fabric is not a terrible thing. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, looks like that's everything. As I said, I will get together the list of questions that I provided you with today and send them through to Ellie, and she can distribute that to you. If you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to me either through my website or my email. Again, it's ceildwdi@gmail.com. I am so grateful to all of you for spending some time with me this afternoon. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Ellie, for putting that in there. And if you have any questions, get in touch with me. Thank you all so much for your time today. I hope you have a great, productive afternoon.